A bright idea in learning and development is on its way. Learning Now TV. Coming soon.
And a very good morning, good evening, or good afternoon to you wherever you're watching in the world today. Welcome to Learning Now TV.
A bright idea in learning and development is on its way. Learning Now TV. Coming soon.
And a very good morning, good evening, or good afternoon to you wherever you're watching in the world today. Welcome to Learning Now TV.
scarlet woman. That's what she'd like to be. A lovely heart, but good one, to soothe her vanity. She says that I'm her hero because I keep on bouncing back like Play-Doh. But I'm no scarlet woman, would you believe? Oh yes, indeed.
take a look at what's coming up on tonight's programme.
It's now time for this month's broadcast of Learning Now TV.
Welcome to September's Learning Now television. And I've got a very exciting piece of information. Today, co-presenting with me is Kate Graham, and she's going to be co-presenting for the next few months. So I'm really thrilled and delighted about that. But I'd like her to tell us what's happening this month, Kate.
Well, thank you very much, Nigel. That's a very kind introduction. So today's show includes an interview with yourself and Jonathan Satchell, Chief Executive of Learning Technologies Group. We were also hearing from Martin Cousins about the latest research on informal learning, and also a subject very close to my heart, women in learning, with a fantastic panel. So,
chaired by yourself.
Exactly.
Enjoy the show. I can't tell you how many months we have tried to be in the same room as Jonathan Satchell to get this interview in the can. But today we've succeeded. And I'm thrilled, really thrilled, to have Jonathan Satchell, who's the Chief Executive of the Learning Technologies Group, to talk to me today. Welcome, Jonathan.
Morning, Nigel. Thank you, Henry.
So tell me about the Learning Technologies Group. What does it comprise, and why did you build such a multifaceted company? What was wrong with the original components?
There's nothing wrong. It was the desire to assimilate them. As you know, we owned Epic, and I think that's really important because that's still the ethos of that business, delivering bespoke learning experiences for large corporates and government, still sits very much at the heart of what we do. But we recognised coming into the sort of 2012, 2013 time that finally the learning industry was beginning to recognise the importance of digital as part of the mix. We'd heralded it for many, many dawns and it hadn't come, as it were. We were being approached by private equity as the foundation stone of a consolidation play. And my chairman and I just said, hold on a sec, why do we want to do this to someone else's tune? Why don't we dance to our own? And we decided pretty quickly to unfold it through the summer of 13, that we became public in the autumn with the absolute intent on going and acquiring businesses. I'd been talking, if you like, flirting with Piers Lee for a very long time. We thought the combination of Epic and Line would be a very powerful one. They brought an intellectual rigour that we were very excited about. That happened in April 14 as our first acquisition. And thereafter, we made one or two more content acquisitions in Preloaded, the games company, and Uclea, the financial services compliance training company. And then from 2016 onwards, we shifted gear. It wasn't specifically intended to work like this. It just happened to evolve like this. We bought Rusticy, which I think was a milestone acquisition in many ways. Obviously, a very well-known business, the expert plumber of the industry. People were puzzled and curious as to why we did it. I always believed that the way things are going to go, the way you need to integrate data, the way we're going to measure things in a multifaceted way, to have someone like that who is at the heart of SCORM and XAPI would give us a great strength and power. And I have to say, it's paid off.
So it's proved. Yes.
Oh, goodness me, absolutely.
Yes. Does that work internally for you? In other words, do you drink your own medicine? Are you integrated as an organisation, or are you looking at the integration for customers outside?
We do both. So operationally, we've got the LTG backbone, which is all the central services to support the businesses, and we try and take away the mundanality complexity of what they do to enable them to just focus on customer service and growth and product development. But in terms of the individual businesses, they still operate as separate units unless it's appropriate to combine them, like we combined Epic and Line and we combined People Fluent and Net Dimensions, but that was for operational reasons.
Yes.
The other businesses sit in their own brand with their own management teams and their own go-to-market strategy, but they link together in many ways. So group selling, as we call it, is very important to us now.
More and more so, I would imagine.
Absolutely. And, you know, in this ever complex landscape of the way you deploy learning technology, what I think we're managing to differentiate ourselves with is this offer that we can, first of all, prime the pump with excellent bespoke or custom content to really meet the need of the customer, and the learner. But then beyond that, we can actually support it with platforms to distribute it, curate it, collate it, measure the effectiveness of it. We have long believed that learning analytics is one of the most important things. You know, we've finally got senior C-suite management teams who are going, we know learning and talent development is really important to us now.
Yes.
Okay, they've always said it is, but they really know.
They mean it, and they want it proved as well.
But when they
What do
spend
get for their
money, exactly, what do they do a year later after they've spent the money?
Yes.
So what's my return on investment?
Yes.
Is this working?
Yes.
Are my people performing better?
Yes.
Is it affecting my bottom line? And the old sort of Kirkpatrick ways of doing things, people attended the course and they passed the test.
Who cares?
It's not really going to cut it, is it?
Who cares?
So I believe that what Washshed is doing is right at the bleeding edge,
Yes.
in the vanguard of this whole concept of measuring the effectiveness of learning. And then if you pivot that and say, hold on a sec, if we think that where the industry is going to go, and this is where I'm out of my depth, you need people like Piers, Lee, as Chief Strategy Officer, to talk more about it. But our view is that ultimately, what we want is a very subtle learning situation where it's in the flow of work permanently. And it's subtle because we don't really notice it. It intelligently and intuitively supports our performance. And to do that, you're going to have so many data points to actually know what needs to happen.
And know the individuals as well as the
personalization,
yes.
the requirement of the task, the moment in time. It's very complex.
And you can do that.
Look,
you're moving towards doing it.
But we absolutely cannot do that today.
Okay.
But we have got components that we are building towards, and that's our ultimate holy grail, if you like. It's some way away, but we're beginning to prove limited parts of it.
So you can cover the whole spectrum from learning outside work, i.e. fully developed material that people focus on outside the flow of work, through totally integrated learning in the flow of work, performance support, and that you can measure the whole spectrum and see what you actually get for the money that you've put in and the time that you've invested.
That's the ultimate goal. I think I'd be overstating it to say we can do all of that today.
But that's the aim.
It's the aim, and we have the components already.
Yes.
And if you look at what we've bought in terms of talent management capabilities, learning analytics, Rusty, and Net Dimensions, which are a very comprehensive learning management system, if you look at how you can assimilate those components together. So, for instance, when we built Instilled and launched Instilled, our learning experience platform, but a few months ago, that was really being created from lots of individual components, integrated together with additional developments on top.
So that shows the value of the group. In a sense.
Absolutely. Oh, the value of the group is profound in terms of the sum of its parts. I know that's a hackneyed old phrase, but it really is quite important here. And we're very considered in what we acquire and what we don't acquire. It's just as important not buying something as it is buying something.
Yes.
Seriously.
We're
very discerning.
Yes, and you've got to focus on the customer, which is really important. Where the market is going, what those people out there will need going forward, rather than what you think is good for them.
Sure. I think the other aspect, though, is I do feel, and I'm thrilled. I've played around in this business since the 90s when I was.
I know, when it was all just kind of an illusion or a delusion,
and it's
now real.
It's so real, isn't it? And we talked before we came on.
Yes.
It's exciting, Finally, these things are becoming reality. And what I'm most excited about, I'm lucky enough to lead an incredibly talented group of people, nearly 800 people now,
wow.
Mostly across the US and UK, but we do have some others sort of dotted across the world. And we're also very strongly orientated around our fiscal discipline. We're a public company, of course, so that dictates that to us. But it means that we're in a very strong financial position. I do worry about our industry in that, of course, when things become popular, you get a lot of venture capital money flowing in, yes. And some of the cost controls get ignored. And it's necessary. The industry has to grow, but we're also, I think, heading into the end of an economic cycle at some point. Who knows? Is it 1 or 3 or 5 years away? But it's somewhere. It's a when, not if. And we hope that we're going to be standing there, strong and firm, ready to further consolidate the industry.
And
when
not
that
wallowing
time
in
comes.
debt.
No, absolutely not.
Because one of the things that was remarkable in a way was the Obama regime's decision to kickstart the learning technology industry
Absolutely.
in the US, and that spread all around
Thank
the
you
world.
very much.
Yes, it created a market.
It helped a lot.
And it put lots and lots of money came flowing with it. And with that, some crazy ideas and some even crazier companies.
But Nigel,
so
I think
you've taken a middle line.
we
through
have. If you like, I think we've taken sort of what I might call a sort of rather old-fashioned fundamental line. We're not in, other than with certain products and capabilities, I wouldn't call us at the bleeding edge or in the vanguard of everything.
Yes.
We are assimilating high-quality businesses that are mature, that have got long-established customer relationships. We're focusing on getting those things right. We don't always get them right, but we're focused on delivering great customer service first and foremost, and doing that in an efficient, profitable way, and maintaining a group of talented people and giving them opportunity as well.
Yes.
The lovely thing I enjoy is seeing the many people in our organisation that can flourish because we've got so many different career directions for them now,
Yes.
Including overseas development if they wish.
Just quickly to finish, who do you most admire out there? Is there one organisation or one theme that really floats your boat?
I think there are many themes. I admire many of the gurus and the leaders and the thought leaders in the industry, including peers, I might add, who are able to, I think, pretty much predict what's going to happen. And I listen, I read a lot about what they're thinking. I think some leading businesses that have garnered a massive foothold, like Cornerstone.
Yes.
Pluralsight, I think, just saw the opportunity for coding.
Yes, and kept
academy.
the focus.
Absolutely.
Kept the focus,
They
rigidly.
stuck to their
Yes,
knitting. They
exactly.
never ever went outside that.
Yes.
That's been brilliant. And,
Yes.
and they effectively, if you look at it, they do almost all the things that we do,
Yes.
but they do them in one laser focused way.
Yes.
And they're growing beautifully.
It's the age of learning.
It absolutely is, and I love some of the new phrases that are being coined by the Bursons and the Deloittes, about learning being the competitive advantage and so on. Finally, we've sat in this industry. Nigel, you and I have been in it for the same amount of time, 30 odd years.
Yes.
Finally, it's coming true.
Yes, it's coming.
real.
Everything is coming together.
Yeah.
And you're right at the heart of it.
We're one of those at the heart of
Yes.
it, and as I say, I feel incredibly privileged to lead a group of 800 or so people that are doing some fantastic work in this space.
Well, I just have to say congratulations and thank you very much for talking to me.
Not at all, it's a pleasure.
Jonathan Satchell, Chief Executive, Learning Technologies Group. Thank you.
Thanks, Nigel.
Our contrarian Robin Hoyle is back, wading in very deep water this time. What he's looking at is whether L&D should get stuck into the politics of the organisation or keep well out. Now, you could argue keep out, but what he's saying is where there are issues about staff security, career development opportunities, cutbacks on investment in talent, should L&D not take a stance and argue for the staff and maybe against the prevailing norm in the organisation, or should it stay back and stay clear? Listen to Robin. It's fascinating.
May you live in interesting times is an old Chinese curse, and I've heard it a lot recently. And of course, it speaks to the whole idea of political chaos that's going on at the moment. And it's going on all over the place, but it's particularly acute, I think, within the UK and in areas of US politics as well. It affects everything, including the increasing polarisation of people on either side of the debate, whether that is Brexit or the Mexican border wall, whether that's Me Too, Black Lives Matter, climate emergency. It kind of encompasses all of those things. The centre ground is a pretty small place to occupy now, and if you are there at all, it's a fairly lonely environment. So why is this something to do with Learning Now TV? Why am I making a piece about Learning Now TV talking about politics? Well, it started because I got an article in my newsfeed the other day which came from hrtechnologist.com. And that article was called Adopting a Gig Economy Mindset in Your Organisation. I thought, oh, that sounds sort of intriguing. But let me read you part of the opening paragraph. There has been a significant amount of debate surrounding how to address the unique challenges associated with the gig workforce. Should we treat them like real employees? In reality, we may have this whole thing backward. Instead, we should be asking, how can we treat our full-time employees more like gig workers? And so it went on. At no point in this article did it suggest that we should replace those in insecure jobs, many of whom feel forced to have taken them because their alternative is no work at all, to replace those insecure workers with more permanent staff. In fact, quite the opposite. It suggested that that level of insecurity would be a useful measure to introduce to our colleagues who are currently in rather more settled employment with better status and better opportunities. And that, I think, is a learning issue, because I said at the time, when it first came out, I thought that this was a right-wing comment. And I thought I'd consider that. And I spoke to a lot of people. I spoke to a number of people who are gig economy workers, people who are on zero-hour contracts. Interestingly, despite some of the coverage about people liking the flexibility, I didn't find a single person who I spoke to maybe 5 or 6 people, who was a willing 0 hours employee. They were all there because there was nothing else available for them. And so these individuals shared their views with me, and they talked to me about 2 things. The first is that they said, as soon as you're in that situation, you are unequal within the workforce. It is very difficult to go and have a sensible conversation with someone, particularly one where you may be disagreeing with them about something or raising a concern, if that individual has the power to tell you whether or not you're coming into work the next day. So there's a level of both economic inequality and status inequality there, and inequality which is derived from a sense of exploitation. People feel that they are being exploited, and therefore they feel even more insecure and even more unequal. And that, I thought, was a bad thing, but it doesn't just apply to 0 hours contract workers. If you look at the Joseph Rowntree Foundation report from late last year, that said that there are 8 million people living in households below the poverty line within the United Kingdom, in which one of the household members is in work. Teaching unions and health service unions have published stories recently about their members, teachers and nurses, having to go to food banks to put food on the table at the end of the month. Now, it seems to me that if you're in that level of poverty, that level of insecurity, you are not prepared to give a kind of discretionary effort at work, because on one level, you've got too much other stuff to think about. The rest of your life is too hard. And on another level, you're thinking, why the hell should I bother? Why should I give more of myself to a job which doesn't pay me enough to meet my bills at the end of the month or doesn't guarantee me employment next week? And discretionary effort is a key part of learning and development. Very often the activities that we engage people in when we're asking them to learn asks them to give more of themselves rather than less. And so we need that discretionary effort. We don't get it in those circumstances. What's more, when I was speaking to those 0 hours contract workers, I was talking about their experience of workforce training. And they said the training that happened was the minimum absolutely required to meet health and safety laws. It was done as cheaply as possible, as quickly as possible, and it was there to get a tick in a box. None of them thought that they'd learned anything. They were just told things, and that was it. And then off onto the job, because they were dispensable. They were replaceable as cogs in a machine. And in fact, that's what they were, cogs in the machine. So the idea that an HR technologist should say to us, this is something to aspire to, this is a way to move forward, should make those of us in the learning industry somewhat concerned. because our ability to get things done within organisations relies on discretionary effort, relies on people having a commitment and some level of investment in their own skills within their employment. If that investment isn't coming the other way, why should they bother? So that's a problem for me, and I thought at that time that this was a slightly unequal relationship, but also that this is still tinged with that sense that it comes from a certain viewpoint. And technologists and the technologies they create and some of their advocates have bothered me for a little while in terms of where are they actually coming from, what is driving and motivating them. Now, do their political views matter? Well, I think they do. I was brought up in an era of political activism when I was taught very clearly that the personal is the political and the political is the personal. The two things are not separate. They are informed by each other. And I think we can see in their work some of those viewpoints leaching out and coming through. And I think we have to make some choices. It's not to say that their political affiliations means that we should ignore everything they say, but it does mean that we should question what they say. In the same way as I perfectly expect people to question what I say, because I've clearly come out as an old lefty in this piece, even though I have not been a member of a political party for almost 20 years. Having said that, I think that I have a sense of beliefs which is not necessarily party political, but which are nonetheless perceived as political these days. I believe in fairness. I believe that people have the right to be treated with respect. I believe that the vulnerable need to be protected. And most importantly, as a trainer, as somebody involved in the facilitation of knowledge gained, I believe that everybody has the right to an equal opportunity to learn, to develop, and to reach their potential. I hope some of you will join me in that. And in the meantime, enjoy your interesting times.
Hello and welcome to this segment about women in learning. Now, you might have seen across social media and a few events this year this subject come up. It stems from some research that Donald Taylor ran last year that says that not enough women are getting into senior positions within learning and development. So I made it a bit of a point to unpack that and start to look at some of the underlying causes. And we've had a few different panel sessions that I've run at events during the last few months. I'm delighted to welcome today a panel of not just women, as you'll see, but learning and development professionals with a vested interest in this subject. So Alex, Lydia and Andrew, thank you very much for coming along today. I've had conversations with you all about this topic, and it's clear that it's struck a chord with people. We've had kind of 800 people join a LinkedIn group, unprecedented. We've had a lot of different attention around this. And clearly it matters to all of us. So I just invited you all here today to ask you about your specific experiences. So Andrew, we'll come to you in a moment, if you will, because obviously you're the anomaly on the panel today. But Alex, we've known each other for a long time. And when we started the LinkedIn group, you said something really, really profound to me, which was about not wanting to go to events as much as you used to within learning and development because you didn't feel represented. And I really wanted to unpack that a little bit because I think that touches on some of the underlying challenges that we're facing within L&D.
Yeah, I mean, even with the Women in Learning group itself, I was like, I didn't want to even join that in one sense because I felt so detached from the conversations, and I felt the conversations weren't representative of things that I saw in organisations, experiences challenges that I'd faced. And I'd go to events and, you know, it's great catching up with people, meeting people, but I still felt that the things that I was passionately caring about coming across just weren't on the agenda, and that felt a little bit isolating. And then it got to the point where I wouldn't just blame it on L&D world, but I think life and all sorts of things converge. And I think we can all say, even at this time, we're going through lots of flux in society and social change. And I think those all kind of came together for me to feel that this is a space where I'm just going to take a step back from and maybe observe, because I've tried to be a part of the conversation and I don't feel included.
So is there something around at Learning Live last week, somebody used the phrase thought diversity as well, which I really liked.
Yeah.
So is there something around that, a kind of, maybe you're coming at it from a more practical level?
Yeah, I think my experience or my background, I'm a very hands-on, practical person, and I shine best when you get me to do something and when I'm in the process of it. So sometimes selling myself or selling all the things I've done is not my strong point, and I've seen people be able to pitch themselves in a certain way and they get acceptance where I don't. And I'm like, I've done this, and it seems like it doesn't matter how many things I've done, I always have to prove another thing. That's what it feels like. So it feels like you're always at a starting point, and you see other people going different places and you're like, what am I doing wrong? Because you're always at the beginning. It feels like that. And as a woman, as a black woman, and now as an older black woman, I find I'm getting all these things thrown at me, and I work for myself now, and that's partly one of the reasons. But when I was in an organisation, I started to feel my age become a barrier, because for one, people didn't realise how old I was. They thought I was younger.
Always.
Yeah, they thought, I think it's catching up with me now, but they always thought I was younger, so I had a kind of, but then when they realised how old I was, it was almost like it kind of made people take a step back, because it's almost like, when you're younger, you're more impressionable, and people had that impression. When they realised, no, I'm actually a fully fledged grown woman that, has been out there. I've got experience. I've got skin in this game. I've been an L&D professional since God was in short trousers, but I still am out here having to kind of justify.
And that's really resonated with me as we go through this conversation. I mean, Lydia, does that resonate with you?
A lot of it, yes. Being in a position where people think I'm younger all the time. I think because I'm quite short as well. So I feel that I've walked into new roles and a question has been asked, and when I've given an answer, I've been ignored. I'm thinking, but did I not just actually give an answer to this? Hello. Exactly. Until you work on it and people get to know you and get to know what you're all about and what you can offer. But at the beginning, the presumption is that you don't know, because maybe you're new, or maybe you're being asked a question of a more general HR environment, and you're L&D, so you can't possibly know the policy for something else.
Do you find that when you're in the room with women as well, or is it mostly men?
Both. Different experiences with men where I've actually been put down in front of other people, and that's in a whole.
And what about what Alex was saying about the kind of the thought diversity? Because I know some of the kind of newer, in inverted commas, elements of L&D, experience design, and some of this stuff that's coming through now, that's kind of sits in some of your area of expertise. And have you found that because there's a diversity of thought, you need to get that buy-in, and you're a woman, maybe it's harder? I don't want to ask a leading question, but have you found that is a challenge particularly?
Possibly because I'm a woman, or possibly because it's a new way of thinking. So at the moment, when I go to meet with new prospective employers and I present myself as a non-traditional L&D person, when they're expecting someone just to deliver training, and I'm speaking to them about how I'm going to partner with them, how I'm going to make an impact to their business needs rather than the learning needs, then sometimes people feel that's difficult to understand where you're coming from or what value you can bring, and get back in your box type of
on lots of different levels. Now, Andrew, you are the other on this panel. It's not usually the case for a white guy, may I say. But can you tell people a little bit about why I've asked you here today and just what you're doing to champion the Women in Learning cause?
It's interesting, the conversation, that I find it difficult to reflect on some of the things that you've said, and I'm coming at it very much from the conference space. And a few months ago I realised that I was being asked to speak at lots of events. I was being asked to do lots of podcasts, being asked to do lots of interviews, and I made a conscious decision to say, well, actually I'm only going to do those things if there is a gender balance of speakers. So I get a request probably once a week to do something, and now I'm actively saying to the people who are asking me, do you have a gender split? Are you representing from a BME perspective, for example? And if they're not, well then I won't do them. Or I will do, as I did earlier in the year, took a colleague along who was female to speak, as I'm doing later on this year, taking a female colleague along to speak, where I've been asked by other organisers of different events. I'm not speaking, but what I have done is recommended other women who will speak, because we need to do something to fundamentally shift the voices that are being heard. And I'm putting it out with the hashtag It Starts With Me. And what I would do is encourage other male speakers, if they're regularly being asked to speak, is to actually stop, pause and think, well, is there a woman who understands this stuff and is as good at being able to do this stuff? I mean, even if they're not a named speaker, recommend these people to speak as well, because we need to hear more female voices.
And again, do you think it comes back to that diversity of thought? There's an element of laziness of going, oh yeah, I've seen his name and he's really active on social, so therefore, like, tick a box, he can talk about X, but actually not digging into where they might be able to find some of these great stories that these women could tell.
I think there's an element of laziness. There's also an element of ego. I could go, yeah, absolutely, I'm quite happy to do those, continue to do those things. And someone wants you to speak at their event, well then that's praise for the things that I talk about. What I need to do is to maybe be a little bit more humble and go, well, actually, it isn't about me, it's about moving the profession forward.
And that paying it forward piece is really important. I mean, last week at Learning Live, we did a session around women in learning, but also a session about the new generation and bringing faces forward. And Colin Steed, who runs Learning Now TV, has done the kind of under 30s bracket as well. Like, what are these people who are coming up doing? And it's just about mixing up those stories and that input, isn't it?
That's a really good point, Kate, because I think that as much as, Andrew, you're saying it's about men recommending women, it's about women who are in more senior positions recommending younger women as well. Because I came up through L&D with no mentors and no guidance, because I reported into HR and not into people development roles. And so in the past 12 months, I've gone out and found myself mentors and have networked and met lots of people like yourself. And I feel that I have a role to play also. So if there's ever an opportunity to mentor someone younger and give them the opportunity to step up, then I feel that it is our role as well, because that balance needs to happen.
I've mentored a couple of other women who I know have to go out and deliver training, and I feel proud when I see them kind of conquering male spaces. It's not about conquering male spaces, it's about having the confidence to exist and know that your contribution is as valuable as your male counterparts. And we want younger women to feel that. And I've mentored a few women, and like I said, it's very gratifying to see them hold their own in spaces where I know that they might not have had that confidence to do it had I not kind of said, you can do this.
Step forward.
Yeah, but I still need to do it for myself. It's something that you're constantly...
Well, I can't think of a better way to wrap that up. Thank you very much for coming along today, guys, and sharing your... I know we haven't had a lot of time, but we'll be continuing the conversation around women in learning in future panel sessions as well.
Studies have shown that learning programmes are now crucial weapons in the fight to attract and retain talent. Working closely with modern learning organisations across the globe, we have developed Learning Programmes of Excellence, a prestigious award recognising exceptional, state-of-the-art learning programmes. If you're a learning department or function, LPE will help you attract new talent. You'll boost your appeal as an employer by showcasing the calibre of your learning programmes and development opportunities within your organisation. If you're a provider of learning, LPE gives you an absolute guarantee that your learning programs are capable of creating a lasting positive effect on performance and business outcomes. Get in touch with the Learning and Performance Institute now and begin your learning program of excellence journey.
Now, we're delighted to welcome back our friend Brent Schlenker, who hasn't been with us for the last year, but he's back in the Learning Now TV fold to talk about why communities are the new courses.
Hi everybody, Brent Schlenker in Phoenix, Arizona. I've been gone for a while, but it's great to be back on Learning Now TV. Thank you so much, Colin, for having me back on the show. One thing I've been focusing a lot on is community, and I've had an opportunity to create and to support several different communities since I was last on Learning Now TV, and that's what I want to talk about today. Community is an important part of learning. One of the phrases I use quite often is training is an event, learning is a process, technology supports them both, and performance is our ultimate goal. But one of the things I think a lot of people get hung up on is this idea of learning as a process. What exactly does that mean? And I think what we'll start to see at a much higher level when we're looking at the overall landscape of the corporations and the businesses that we support is this idea that technology is going to start taking over and doing a lot of the content creation and some of the little things that we normally do in training and learning and development. And the biggest shift that I see happening in what we're doing is on the human side. So the technology absolutely is changing, and it's changing very fast. If you listen to some of the thought leaders out there like Trish Ewell, she will tell you that it's happening a lot faster than most people can possibly imagine. And I believe her. And that's why one of the reasons I'm looking at communities is that I see communities as the next course, the next big project or part of the ecosystem that we will probably be supporting more often is this idea of the community. And it's not like we shouldn't have done that from the start, and it's not like communities haven't formed and been formed for a very long time. But part of what our job is going to become is being much better at both building and connecting people and supporting those connections and those communities that get built around jobs inside of companies. So you'll have the larger business as a whole, but there will be smaller communities, obviously, that get created. And what we need to do in supporting learning as a process is getting better at utilizing technology. And remember, technology applies to both. So we're going to apply the technology to the training still, and that's where a lot of the AI and a lot of the machine learning is going to be coming in. But more on the human side, that's where the learning comes in, and that's where communities and the new community as a classroom is going to start playing a really big role. You probably already see this in things like the XAPI cohort. Megan Torrance talks a lot about cohort learning. And it is a really, really, really important part of the idea of community as the classroom, or community as the new course, as I like to say. And of course, you've probably heard Sam Rogers talk about the Seth Godin mastermind that he is a part of. I don't know if Seth calls it a mastermind or a workshop, but anyways, he has a really, really cool saying that it just has stuck with me for a very long time, since I first heard it. And he says, live isn't efficient, but it's urgent. And the wonderful thing about that is that it applies the idea that through technology, we can connect with people in a live fashion using live streaming. And that's urgent when we need to talk to somebody, when we need to get connected with our cohorts, when we need to get connected with our peers. Live streaming gives us that affordance on a regular basis, and it doesn't matter where you are around the globe at all. The technology supports that very, very special type of learning where you can actually get together with folks. But, like he says, it's not efficient, It's hard to scale up live streaming, live connectivity. That's why we went to e-learning back in the day. But now you'll notice that the pendulum is swinging back to being more connected, being more human, and being able to have those peer-to-peer connections with our colleagues that I think we really, really need. And if you're like me, you probably miss them a lot. Lots of folks are getting into it where we see experts sharing their expert knowledge and their expert skills, but in a small community setting or in a cohort. Management leadership training is being done this way. Cohort management leadership training is very, very popular these days. So it's spreading across all of the things that we do, everything from onboarding as a cohort all the way up through your job training and management leadership training all the way through. If we can support the learning process through supporting communities, now we can start showing how much extra value we can give to the business, more than we've ever been able to give with just training. So I hope you all think a little bit about that and start thinking a little bit more closely about the communities that you belong to, and start thinking about what is it that makes a community so powerful and such a fantastic way to learn, and how can we as an industry support that more heavily in the work that we do inside of the businesses that we support. I'm Brent Schlenker for Learning Now TV. I will see you guys next month.
Whoever you are, wherever you're from, you can network with professionals and experts on the award-winning DPG community.
You can choose to look at articles, videos, podcasts. You can look at comments that people have made. I find it my first stop when I'm thinking about L&D. If I have a question or I want to learn more, that's the first place I go.
Just head online and search for DPG community and sign up free today.
It wouldn't be Learning Now television without bringing in the polymath Martin Cousins to review with us new research reports. Or actually, in this instance, not so new. It's actually been out a few months. But today, we're going to talk about harnessing the power of informal learning, which is an e-learning guild report. Martin, why is it interesting?
Well, because informal learning is probably the number one way in which people learn at work. So according to this research of about 400 L&D professionals, 94% say that it's happening in their organisation to some degree.
Yes, and the other 6% are probably lying.
Well, yes, but I mean, let's focus on what is happening rather than what isn't, because it's such a massive chunk of that response. So, yeah, it's happening. I don't think this is news to anyone who works in learning, but I think go a bit deeper into this research, and then you find that 67% of those learning professionals do not evaluate it.
Yes, so they acknowledge it exists and then ignore it, essentially.
Yeah, and I think that probably we could join the dots and say that may just go to the heart of where learning development is at the moment. You know, it's kind of
equivocal, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's saying it's there, but we don't like to touch it.
Yeah, and the implications are massive, and they are kind of drawn out in this report. You know, actually, if it's happening, then what do you do about it? And how do you really build on the fact it's happening to really benefit the organisation?
Yes.
And that then leads to some questions around, well, what's the role of learning and development when it's not sanctioned by the learning and development team? So that's why I think you could join the dots and make the case for the fact that we probably have to pay a lot more attention to informal learning. And there are some interesting points made in this about, you know, this research does flag up the fact that if we were to take informal learning more seriously, it does change the role of learning and development within the organisation.
And also benefits the organisation. It's not just about L&D. And they've got, at the end of it, what I particularly liked were there's 16 bits of good practice. And one of them is exactly as you're saying. Take it seriously, incorporate it, try to measure its impact without destroying it in the process. and have people responsible. Like one of the things is they should appoint a digital curator. Every organisation should have someone who is monitoring this kind of content, this kind of chatter, if you like, around the organisation and pulling out from it what's useful and helpful, and that should be put on a different level perhaps and made more accessible to more people. So I think those 16 recommendations get to the heart of it, but you're fundamentally right that if you go through those 16, you don't go very far through them before you realise that it's saying L&D really has to change its attitude, has to change its behaviour, and maybe has to change its skill set in order to really incorporate what's actually going on and give it a twist to make it more impactful and more effective.
Yeah, I think that's, it talks about the fact that there could be a loss of prestige for learning teams if the focus is on how do you enable and support and amplify informal learning. And I think that's kind of goes to the nub of it right now, because I think learning teams are probably employed to do one thing, and the reality is that informal learning is happening in a different, in a different place, a different space. Yeah, it pervades the organisation.
Yes.
So those recommendations are really, the heart of those is all about knowledge sharing.
Yes.
Now, there are plenty of people in L&D for whom that idea of social learning is such a challenge. And yet 94% say that informal learning is happening.
Yes.
So for me, this is more about understanding, well, if it's happening and people are sharing, then why is social such a challenge? And I think it's because the focus of L&D is not on that. It's not on informal learning. It is actually on doing the stuff that the organisation wants to do to people. And I think that's probably where things need to shift.
I think so. It's like there's a huge wasted opportunity sitting in most organisations waiting to be exploited. And at least this report, it's very thin. It's not a big, thick report. It's not a huge number of people, but it does draw attention to that fundamental point. And it does help you plan a pathway towards social and informal learning. And for that, I think it's very useful and very valid.
Yeah.
So, Martin, thank you for drawing our attention to that. And download it. It's freely available and worth reading.
Definitely.
Yep.
In the L&D world, we all know our biggest challenge is knowledge fade and demonstrating ROI from our training interventions. At Elephants Don't Forget, we use artificial intelligence to guarantee that what you train your employees, they learn and retain. If you are looking to transform the impact your training content has in your business, improve the ROI, and perhaps help employees learn and retain even the dull regulatory material, drop me a line at nelly@elephantsdon'tforget.com.
Now, our favourite man with a camera about town, Rob Clark from Learning News, presents a special report from this month's Learning Live from the Learning and Performance Institute.
We are here to meet people, see people that we know, make new friends, establish deeper relationships, and educate the market on what we're doing, recommendations, AI, curation, all of these important things.
I like the people that come here and the conversations that you have. I always come to these sessions, these events, with a long list of questions and things that I want to explore with people.
Every year it gets bigger, the topics get more innovative. It's incredible to see how far learning has come.
One of the big unknowns in the marketplace is I'm not sure what skills I need, and therefore I'm not sure what development I need to put in place.
There's been a lot of conversations from clients about recruitment throughout the next few months. You know, how is Brexit going to affect that? What roles are going to be needed? We've talked about agile working. How can contractors really help an organisation? What skills do they need to learn, or do they need to be working on right now to really be top of the pile when they're applying for roles?
Always great to be back at Learning Live. It's an event that we've been to now for 3 years.
We've had some really rich conversations, senior execs, learning and development professionals, HR,
are. They're really grappling with how they can cultivate cultures of creativity where people are really passionate about learning that's driven by the individual as much as the organisation, looking for really practical ways in which to do that.
What I was trying to help the audience go through is navigating what the future might look like. Now, if we accept that the jobs of the future are the ones that machines can do, let's not have education and teaching and training programs that are training us to compete with machines, because the machines will win. How can we design learning environments and learning cultures to equip our colleagues, our children? I mean, it's a lifelong thing.
The big theme we're seeing this year is around how really we can see the role of L&D elevated in organisations and how they can become more of a trusted business partner.
We have to start to speak in the language of skills. Until we know the skills that you have, the skills that you need, how to develop those skills, how to measure those skills, how to utilize that data that you're collecting around people's skills in an effective way, it's really going to be a challenge to make digital transformation a reality.
There are a myriad of roles now in learning and development, and we're looking at areas like video production, content curation, data analyst, all as critical roles in L&D.
We've all heard stories about the rise of AI, the rise of automation, and the drastic impact it's going to have on our workplace. So we need our people to be able to learn quickly, the skill of getting better at getting better. So how can we enable our people to learn faster, learn more quickly?
The challenge is that there's so much transformation going on. What sort of organisation do we need to be from a cultural point of view to be able to cope with this change, both to recognise it and act on it?
I always say when people talk about learning culture, they say, I don't think I have one. I'm like, you do. You just can't see it. It's happening on WhatsApp. It's happening on Slack. It's happening around the water cooler. But as L&D, are there ways that we can tap into that larger knowledge pool and expand it and have people sharing and having the dialogue? We're not guessing anymore. We're using metrics. We're trying to make decisions based on a wider organisational strategy.
The quality of people that have been to visit our stand have been exceptional and had some really good conversations. Great event.
Pitching our leadership course recently, the response was, we get it. You're not about teaching a few leadership techniques, you're about transforming the organisation. And that's right. Imagine an organisation where people are energised and motivated by being in control of what they do. Imagine they're trusted and given freedom to absolutely work at their best. Imagine they have managers who coach them rather than tell them what to do. Wouldn't you like to work in that environment? That's what we can help you create through our leadership programs to develop the skills, and through our consultancy to help you with your processes and the things you need to change. That's happy. We can help you create a truly happy, productive workplace.
So next up, I'm delighted to be welcomed by Mark and Scott, who I'll let introduce themselves, but previously of Empower and doing some really exciting things in the world of learning and development. So thank you for joining us today, gents. Can you tell us a little bit about where you're from and why you're here today?
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Scott Pearson from LPD Consulting, and today we're here to talk a bit about a tool that we used as in my previous role in Empower to help us really hit home our compliance obligations to Ofgem.
So I can imagine the compliance obligations for Empower are pretty epic.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. It's a heavily regulated industry, so you know we've really got to get it right.
And what were the problems? People just not completing their compliance training?
Well, it was recognised industry-wide across all energy providers that there's lots of different groups of customers out there, whether those be young parents with very young children, people who are struggling financially, but also older pensioners who struggle to pay their bills and actually use their electricity and gas. So Ofgem came out with a set of rules that everybody's governed by. Now in Empower specifically, because there was so much things that everybody had to know, so when they were on the call they had to listen to certain things, we had to find a different way of trying to get those messages across to our people to try and look out for certain things. And that's where...
So to prevent mis-selling and things like that.
Well, this is where just training people, getting the records of the training on the LMS actually just wasn't enough. We needed to make sure that that knowledge had really imparted on those people. So this is where Nelly came in.
So this is all about really performance change and embedding that behaviour change.
We want to really prove that that change has taken place, and we need to make sure that when they've had some learning that it's sticking.
OK, now who's Nelly?
Well, Nellie is a very friendly, well, she's billed by the company Elephants Don't Forget as a very friendly purple elephant.
Okay.
Branding is a little elephant. And they're actually really specific with you, and they're right that Nellie, it shouldn't really be part of your internal learning brand. It needs to be separate, because Nellie's a support tool. So Nellie sends you a question every single day, takes you 30 seconds to answer it, and then it's going to give you some feedback straight away. Then you just get on with your day job. But over time, Never's clever enough that Nellie will start to send you questions based on what you know, what you're struggling with, what you're not doing so well at, and it will help to kind of improve your knowledge over time.
So actually, you go through the training and then actually you're nudged every day to reflect a little bit on what you've learned and how you would apply that in practice.
Completely personalised.
Yeah.
And it's brilliant because, of course, people forget about the post-learning piece.
Of course,
so we put
all the time.
we put them through this brilliant learning and say, you know that now. Well, really, they don't.
Yeah.
That's the most important bit, absolutely. So it's an essential tool to use for people post-learning to help embed that friendly, annoying little purple elephant.
Friendly and annoying.
Well, and interestingly, what we found was it became everybody's friend.
Yeah.
From the people on the floor who would use it all the time up to the senior managers, loved it.
It was trusted.
Absolutely loved it.
Trusted, that's
Absolutely.
a massive word, isn't
Absolutely.
it? And how did you find, I mean, what was the impact on people's behaviour and how they were handling some of those calls and things?
That's a great question, because everybody had to go through a bit of a journey, because people at first were getting, so what I meant by annoyed, they were getting a bit annoyed that I've got to answer 1 or 2 questions a day, to the point where they then started getting stars and points and going, well, actually, I don't mind this so much.
Yeah.
And they started to get over that curve, and it was all become the norm. And what was really interesting, because of the compliance-related pieces, we started to use it for other compliance-related activities, because it was really effective. And it got people to start embedding. I didn't know that, So it actually, as Max mentioned, is intelligent. It allowed then the managers to build development plans off the back of that information. So the ML that came out the back of the tool, it allowed them to put the development plan together, and that was very specific and individualised, for example, to you, than it was to me. It was totally different.
So there's data that comes out of the back end that says, actually, Kate's struggling a little bit. She's not really doing that well on her questions. We're going to maybe intervene.
And it could be for different factors. There could be factors within that particular team, that area, the type of work that person's getting. But by having that kind of data allows you to ask the right questions rather than just trying to sheep dip people through. So we had some really kind of senior people that own those compliance topics, and they not only knew that the training had been done, they knew that the knowledge was sticking. So we got advocates really, really quickly to kind of make sure the service was well adopted and supported at all levels, because it's not just the senior level, really, is it? No. You've got to go right, all the way through the entire organisation. Yeah. You've got to get that buy-in for it to work.
And how could people, I get emails all day long, I ignore a lot of them, or, don't prioritise a lot of them. Yeah. How did you combat people maybe going, oh, I'll do that later?
Well, that's the thing about the annoying part. It would never go away. It would always come back. It would come back.
So same question if they hadn't answered it?
It can be the same question, but it can also randomise, which means it could totally change the question.
Right.
And then give you a timer. So it's almost like you've got 20 seconds you need to answer, and you're like, all right, I better
so
do it.
bit of jeopardy in there as well.
Yeah.
There's also mobile. So there's a mobile application as well. So, for those kind of audiences that are just predominantly use a mobile phone, there's quite a good mobile app, which will then give you the notifications.
Yeah. That's obviously had an impact at Empower. Mm-hmm. So, and you guys are obviously going to do more with that now. What's the plan?
Absolutely, we're going to do that. I mean, 2 things. We are utilising that in part of our new business to actually talk to customers about the importance of utilising the tools such as Elephants Don't Forget. We could nickname Nellie because
I see what they did there.
we're really trying to champion the fact about post-learning is the most critical section.
Yeah.
But I would say, though, Mark, and I recognise that to anybody who's looking to use a tool such as this, some of the critical things, you've got to get your buy-in from the top. Mm-hmm. Because when we first tried to do a different approach a couple of years ago, it didn't work because the senior leaders didn't believe in it. Don't get me wrong, the operational managers did, but then they were getting driven in a totally different direction by the senior leaders.
Well, it's something different, isn't it?
Totally.
So
I think from the IT set was important as well.
Oh God, yeah. So we kind of realised really quickly that we had to kind of get those hygiene factors right before we actually did anything. So we needed to make it easy, reduce the effort. So, you know, we made sure that when people clicked on the link, there was nothing internally that was going to just let the screen kind of freeze there for a moment. And as soon as we saw those issues, we made sure we got absolutely everything right listed. We made sure that all of the IT teams were completely bought in to support it. We made sure the mobile app was going to be accessible, that it was going to be unblocked. And if we hadn't have done that, then somebody would have clicked on it, it would have frozen there for a minute, then it would have worked, then it would have had 10 seconds left, then it wouldn't have answered it, then they would have started to dislike the tool, and we had one chance to get it right.
So identifying those points of failure up front.
Absolutely, and kind of make it a priority for people. So vulnerable customers was a really kind of good one to start with, really, wasn't it?
It was.
Because it was important to everybody in the business. So by doing that, we were able to kind of get that advocacy for people wanting to take part, because everybody kind of believed in it.
I think to finish it off, just to put in context, the final result, over 95% of people in the business scored 95% or more on this compliance piece, which was unheard of because it was generally in the 40s.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for sharing your journey with us today. It was a great story, and I really appreciate you coming to talk to us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, that's it for another month. But we've always got a little note of events coming in the next 6 weeks or so. So, Kate, what are you going to draw our attention to?
Well, it's a crazy busy time of year for events. So World of Learning is coming up on the 15th of October in Birmingham. On the 24th of October is the Happy Workplaces Conference in London. And then November's equally busy. There's the CIPD annual conference and event in Manchester, and Learning 2019 with Elliot Macy, now obviously part of Closer Still Group, Learning Technologies, also in November in Orlando.
Yes, that's a lot.
It is a lot.
So, we'll see you next month.